Here we are. Thursday morning, 11 o'clock is QT Conversations. It is our opportunity as a profession, as a membership, and as a community of practitioners to push the thinking forward, to share our ideas, to encourage and support each other, probably to make quite a difference. I'm noticing that the following on these recordings is growing, which is so awesome because it means that that the conversations are helpful and helping. I have so much to share with you, and I'll probably do that mostly at the end. What I'm going to concentrate on right now is our topic. The topic for today is exams, of course, because it's May. Exams as a rite of passage. And the idea came to me because my 16-year-old is doing her GCSEs at the moment, and she has worked with two people in the room today, so you will be hearing a lot about her. But I think the reason why I was thinking about this specific topic was because we were walking in the park and the sun was shining. I dragged her out to walk the dog with me. And I remembered those yummy moments revising outdoors. And I started to think about the nice bits of exams, which is quite a thing, right? Because we're constantly either complaining about the pressure exams create, complaining about the anxiety, worrying about whether exams are purposeful at all anymore. But I think it's interesting to explore exams as a rite of passage. So let's remember what our GCSE time was like. There's no O-level people in this room, are there? Yes, there are. Okay. The exams were when you were 16. Tell me about that moment in your life. Julie, you're unmuted, which means you're first.
I can't remember. I
Whoa.
don't remember much about my exam period. I can remember my mum always telling me how stressful it was when I didn't necessarily think it was. She made it stressful by telling me it was stressful. And the only other thing I can remember is we have a park in the same town that the school's in that is known as the Rose Gardens. And I can remember sitting in the Rose Gardens with two friends doing some quiet reading through textbooks in the middle of our study leave. I don't even know what we were looking at. That is all I can remember. My two memories is like can't even tell you who the friends were, but I know that we were only three of us, and my mum telling me how stressful it was.
Okay, so I think it's lovely that you also had that outdoorsy memory. I was saying to Rena, wouldn't it be harder if the exams were in the winter? And she's like, no, because I wouldn't be missing the sunshine. I'm like, no, if you looked up at the sky and you didn't see a drop of blue, there's no hope. I remember looking out the window and being like, oh my gosh, I will be back out in the world soon. And the world was sort of, calling me forth. The role of the parent, I think, is really interesting also. So my sister lives 5 doors up from me, and she has a 16-year-old daughter as well. And they go to the same school. So I have been doing the exam school run in the morning, and I don't trust my husband with it, and I don't trust my sister with it, because I think that handling them well at that final moment is really, really important. Helen, I've got a voice note that I want to share with you guys that Helen recorded. She's given me permission already for my daughter.
This is me trying to remember what I said last night.
Come on then, let's see. Is it going to play? Is this going to work?
Well done today. Lots of good content and lots of good things. Just make sure we take it slow and steady in the morning. Watching out for negatives, silly mistakes with multiplications. Double check those things. Other than that, switch off now. Time for studying is done. Go and take a break. Preserve your working power. I'd be lovely to make you once it comes tomorrow. Just about how it went. Yeah, well done.
That's what I sound like double time.
Oh my gosh, was that double time?
I don't think I normally talk quite that quick.
It was 1.5. I do always listen to you 1.5. So it's good for you and good for me. So tell me about that message and what was your intention behind it, and then come back to your memory.
So the intention behind it was to ensure, or not recommend, maybe is a better word than ensure, encourage, maybe even better. Encourage her not to overwork last night. We had an hour and a half together last night, so it was a long session. Finished at about 8 p.m. And it's at that point, she's not going to learn anymore. She's not going to take anything else in. It's time to switch off.
Explain to me how you know. I agree with you. How do you know that she's not going to learn anymore? Look at this. This is her workspace currently, and it's covered in maths. What's it? Maths. What's it? That sounds
Right
much
answer.
better.
Right answer. Cover it in maths things. It's not just her. Most students aren't going to retain the information that they learn last minute. The neural pathways just aren't developed enough. So yes, some students work with cramming, but very few do.
It's the kids that you see them going to school, like they don't want to shake their head in case the knowledge falls out of their ears on the way in.
that kind of knowledge that's just gone in at the last minute. Yeah, there may be a few things. We talked when we were on the lesson last night about just looking over exact trig values because A, they suck and shouldn't be on, and no, they're okay. But they're sort of facts to remember. So going over those in the morning, great, but just better to go into the exam calm and not stressed and not tired and not overworked. Much better to go in a calm manner so that when the questions then hit, there's no overload. We're not on mental overload already when we start. We can be on
Yeah,
mental
so you're
overload by the
thinking
end because
about
it's maths GCSE. It's
yeah.
going to happen, but starting in a good place.
So there's a few things there, isn't there? There's cognitive overload. You're saying your working memory can't hold that much. So if it hasn't been embedded now, just let go of it because you're much better off having a clear head. And then secondly, the anxiety part of it, which is, take a deep breath right now rather than gobbling down revision until the last minute. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell me about your memories as a GCSE. I know because you're really young. About as a GCSE
I
student.
was GCSEs. I was probably a very cocky 16-year-old when I sat my GCSEs.
Were you 16? Were you not one of those that took them all at 9?
No, not quite 9. My birthday fell in the middle of GCSE season. It always does. It will do this year as well, which is less fun, studying for your exams around your birthday. But it is what it is. I've lost my train of thought. I probably didn't do as much revision as I should have done for some.
Interesting. What was
I
that?
that was the languages. It's not my strongest thing. The maths was obviously easy. So at that age, that's kind of where the cockiness came in, I think. I found most of maths and English and science relatively easy. So I didn't necessarily drive myself to up those grades, just to do the best I could, but I didn't necessarily push to some of those that I could have increased. I definitely did a bit of outdoor learning, but there was potentially more of the walk down to wherever the park was, and then the walk back and sitting drinking a cup of tea than actually doing revision under those circumstances. Yeah, I definitely could have got better grades if I had been more active in my revision, more proactive in my
And
revision.
I can sort of see you sauntering through the whole thing. That's the vision I have now.
Yeah, there was a
But
little bit of filtering.
you weren't also doing musical theatre that year.
No, that came in my degree. So of
Fine.
course, that was more fun than actually getting a decent degree level. No, my degree is fine.
Margaret Mary, you're up.
Okay, I was 15, Scottish all grades, and study leave I really enjoyed. And I think partly because I had my first boyfriend round about that time, just before going into the exam period. So that was quite nice. There was a lot of taking a break and sitting chatting with him. I do remember, maybe not that first year, but maybe with hires and 6-year studies, meeting a friend of mine who went to a different school, and we would go down to into the town. So we go down the street and we go into the library, and we would literally arrange this social time where we'd be in a library and we would work for an hour and a half, and we'd go and have a coffee, and we'd come back and work for another hour and a half, and then we spend the rest of the afternoon just wandering around. So I think a social life with friends was built around this revising. And I think that also extended to university as well. We would a bunch of us would go to the library and we would sit. And even right to the degree, actually, there were a whole group of us who sat in the chemistry library, and we would do the work and we have a break at a time, and it became like a regular thing. And I found that social aspect, um, one really important for the mutual support in getting through the exams, so making sure you weren't crashing out. And secondly, to actually have the discipline to, okay, we've decided we're going to study for this length of time. And even when you look up and you go, oh, I can't stand it, and then you see it and you come back, I can't disturb them. And it would give you that incentive to stay. I found that really powerful. I'm a big supporter of social studying, big
Me
supporter of
too.
it.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing in terms of the accountability, in terms of the culture. So we have a culture of study in our social group. People like us do things like this. That's really motivating. And that moment when you said you looked up and you didn't want to disturb them, so you might as well just put your head down a bit longer. So simple. So you won't be surprised to hear that I had to have a study buddy when I was doing my GCSEs. I wouldn't go through a single thing. I happen to have had a friend who was crazy bright. She got 10 A stars in her GCSEs. And I think she taught me everything as her revision process. And so I did really well. I didn't do as well as her, but I did really well as well. And if I hadn't had that structure, she had 3 older sisters. I'm the eldest in my house. So I'd never seen anybody study before. And I remember that I was sort of following her lead because she knew what it was supposed to look like. I know that my daughter is following the lead of my eldest son, not this one, because, you know, that was a different conversation. But everybody's approaching and experiencing this process in their own way becomes really interesting. So this 16-year-old who wasn't in school during his GCSEs, he only went in for them. The goal was for him to make it through. It was just about touching the desk. If you got there, you won. If you sat through it, you won. If you went to the next exam tomorrow, you are succeeding. So with every child, there's a different goal. For me, it was very much, I did not have a sense of what the whole thing was supposed to look like. And so I followed the lead of this experienced friend of mine, and it worked for me. It really worked for me. And it's definitely, that's an ADHD strategy that I was picking up back then. Nicola, I have waited to give you plenty of time and space to think. Deanne, coming to you next. What was your experience of taking your GCSEs?
Gosh, yeah, like I feel like I just lost all that memory until this conversation. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. I firstly wanted to respond to the idea, probably something similar to what's been described of like positive working culture. I think it's a good reminder as well that like as teachers we forget like we can't control everything, and actually the odds are heavily stacked towards what support and like peer dynamics are going on for that young person, because that really is one of the main determining factors. If you've got cool friends that are invested in your development as much as their own, then that is probably like going to signify the success in a huge way. So I think, yeah, in that sense, I probably got lucky. I had something similar. And yeah, I think probably for me, intrinsic motivation, like I did, particularly with English, like just really liked the subject, I really liked my teacher. So yeah, I was pretty invested. And also something about, I think for me, when I was at school anyway, exams made sense to me in a way that I think they perhaps don't for a lot of people. I liked the idea of like, right, I've been given the mark scheme, I've been given the tick boxes, now I just have to go and tick the boxes. It was really like A level in university where that was thrown out the window for me. But for GCSEs, I felt like, okay, there's a framework, and I know that that's not true for a lot of students. So maybe it's like, I don't know what kind of builds that.
I think it's true that GCSE is far more formulaic than A levels and degrees. You know, I've spent a lot of time looking at the regulated qualifications framework, and that's exactly how they describe it, where initially the thinking is procedural, and then as you get higher up, there's more synthesis that happens. There's more, you know, creating surprising, unique solutions to the problem put in front of you. Your university essays are not like other people's university essays, whereas I can't imagine how boring it is to mark GCSE essays, because they're all supposed to be the same, aren't they? Except handwriting, which has got to be a killer. And I think there was something interesting that you said there about I was lucky. So we make our luck, don't we? I've got a 9-year-old who's finding her place in the world right now. You will have placed yourself in a group of people who enjoyed studying.
Yeah, or if I'm totally transparent, what probably happened is I had a very dramatic friendship group until like veering at the end of year 10, and I got to that point of like, don't know if I like this, and so started leaning towards my slightly geekier friends. So I'm glad, you know, those are still people that I'm close with now, seeing them at the weekend type of friends. So obviously that's been a great asset for me as well, but I'm sure that was a huge part of it.
You know, we say that nerds rule the world around here, don't you?
Well, I do now, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's, you know, that's the choice making side of it. So, Dee, tell us about your O levels.
One thing I would say about summer versus winter exams is, given that I live with someone who has the most appalling hay fever and will have it until September, it started 2 months ago, exams would go so much better for a lot of people if they weren't happening during hay fever season.
Yeah.
Just a thing.
Yeah.
Really when I think about my O levels, we did them in the new gymnasium which had been built. I went to a school in northwest London, didn't have a lot of land, but they managed to raise money to put this new gymnasium up, so we lost some of the outdoor space as a result. But I remember walking into the gym, dumping the bags in the changing rooms, and then the gymnasium, they put this huge canvas thing down to protect the floor, and there were these individual desks. And I remember being completely overwhelmed the first time I saw this, and the fact that all the desks had numbers on, and there were clock, and it was just extraordinary. But within minutes, I felt completely comfortable. I don't know why. I loved the being in a bubble thing and being able to just dump stuff on paper and prove that I knew this stuff. And I was lucky that most of the subjects that I did came relatively easily. I didn't have to try too hard to do well, however you measure that. And the subjects that I struggled a bit more with, didn't do so well at, which meant I didn't enjoy them as much, I kind of didn't do them anymore, which is why I didn't do history, much to my husband's disgust now. Sociology, dumped that. That was far too much opinion, not enough fact.
I love that you just described the bubble, because I love that as well. It's hyper focus, isn't it? And
now I've discovered that I'm ADHD probably, and I can do the whole mind jumping around like a nightmare, but then I can do the hyper focus thing. That still don't know how that works and why it works, and it's annoying. But
I used to, talking of annoying, I used to have a very annoying thing that I used to say to my year twos. I can't imagine what I was thinking now. We used to do creative writing at the beginning of every afternoon. So brought them in from lunch. Before we started the afternoon's lesson, I used to give them 15 minutes quiet writing time, because writers write every day. So I used to say to them, shake your pencil and see what comes out, which is a cruel thing to say to a 7-year-old. But I really meant it, because I was trying to key them into that feeling of it's all in there and I just have to let it come through. And I definitely know that when my daughter's gone into the exam today, she looks confident. She looks like it's all there and she just has to let it come through. Let's see how she feels in chemistry, shall we, Julie?
She will be fine.
Absolutely. I did not put my hand up just now. How did that happen?
Because you were secreting. You were whispering. So it's interesting, because one of the things we talked about on Whenever I Saw Her, Can't Remember, we were talking about the exams that she'd already taken, and how at the moment everyone I'm speaking to, with the exception of one, thinks that they're all going really well. And her response was, that obviously means paper 2 is going to be, you know, horrible. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. It could just be that everyone is really well prepared this year.
Talking of which, this is a COVID year. This is the year that we're year 7 during lockdown. And somebody just wrote a long post on that's sent to one of my WhatsApp groups, which I didn't read because it was too long and it didn't have enough paragraph breaks. But the idea from the first to the last sentence, I can tell you that they were saying, good on you, you kept showing up and you got to this milestone, even though you had a bumpy start.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the milestone. Do our children need to get through a rite of passage such as summative exams? Nicola.
I wouldn't, because you mentioned that in the WhatsApp group today, that note, I hadn't really even thought about it as a rite of passage, but probably because my own proclivity against like standardized testing, I don't, I just think like it's putting kids in like a, what's it, sometimes a round square, what am I trying to say, round peg square hole, that's the one.
We've got a similar one, which is star-shaped peg, square hole, bashes off all the sparkly bits.
Well, yeah, I think that said it much more succinctly than I was trying to, but
I learned it from someone else, Kelly Hannigan. Go on.
Yeah, so maybe like, yeah, the phrasing that you use about like rite of passage kind of makes me reframe it a little bit, and kind of like what Dee was just saying, you know, it's an opportunity to show everything you know. If I could get rid of it, would I on net benefit? Probably, but since it's here, and since we're here to support young people in like advocating for themselves and doing what they need to do to get by in life, yeah, I suppose rite of passage. And also the thing about like coming on exam results day and having that in-person moment, whether it's celebratory or whether it's like supportive community to go with, you know, it's okay, it's not the be all and end all. I think that's the thing that I want to communicate. Like, yes, it's important, but it just isn't the be all and end all as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I agree with you. It felt like a really new idea, the idea of a rite of passage, and it was inspired by Peps McRae's point today about, how did he say it? It was.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was. Oh, I know. It was picking up your results on an app rather than going in and opening the
Yeah.
envelope. Hi, Faith. Welcome.
Hi everyone, sorry, I was just listening while I was walking my dog, and I really want to share, so I'll let you continue and let me know
No,
when.
dive right in. We want to hear. What's your memory? It's very recent.
So I am 19, so I was one of the COVID years for my exams. I didn't take GCSEs.
Right.
I got teacher assessed grades, so the conversation as exams as a rite of passage is really interesting to me because we didn't do them. So yeah, it was very strange, obviously, during COVID. But I think we did miss out because of that. And we don't have that experience of GCSEs before A levels. My A levels were the first exams I ever took, and it was very scary to the point where I had to have hypnotherapy to do those exams. And I think it really did mess us up in a lot of ways because we didn't have that practice. There were mocks, but we sat them at home, so it wasn't an exam situation. I am very glad that now everything's gone back to normal, but I think situations like that make me realize how exams need to be more online. Does that make sense?
Tell me that last bit. Exams need to be more online.
Just in case. First of all, if there are situations like in terms of COVID where we can't sit exams in person, but secondly, I'm an anxious person, lots of neurodivergent people with mental health issues. Exams are super stressful. I'm sure, that's a whole other talking point. But it's, as a rite of passage, everyone should be able to sit their exams without feeling fear, anxiety, without having panic attacks when walking in, without needing therapy. And I think online exams would really help that And I get the communal aspect of sitting exams together, but there's also, I think we need to widen our idea of how taking exams can be more digital. Does that make sense?
Fascinating. So it almost like, because it doesn't have to be instead of community or exam rooms, it could be a combination of the two things where you're saying that online examinations could be far more inclusive because you can do them in lots of different settings and still control. Come on, Nicola.
Yeah, I just really wanted to respond to what Faith said. Like, so useful to just hear that perspective. And thanks so much for being so open about that. I don't think that that's an uncommon experience to find the huge anxieties. Like, I don't think it's an understatement to say that our exam system is traumatizing, like collectively. And I think it's just like, yeah, if we just look at it's fine, it's a rite of passage. Well, that that's it's almost like how can we possibly tell students that their exams are the most important thing that they'll ever do in their entire life and their whole education is building up to it, and then go, oh no, but you can't do them now. It's like we can't kind of have one thing or the other. We have to look at like it's I just don't think it's working.
Helen, you've got your thinking face on.
I know, it's always dangerous when I put my thinking face on, isn't it?
Come on, bring it.
So I guess I have lots of little tuggy things here that have kind of been going around in my brain. It's sad that it's exams that are the unifying point of time for that one, but I think it's important for students to have a unifying point of time together.
And please, not a prom.
Well, whatever it is.
That is not a healthy one.
However you are going to mark it, we obviously, when we did leave, both in year 11 and in year 13, we had leavers events, things that we all came back together. That's the same thing about going and getting your exam results from the school. We got back together to get them. It was a togetherness that we had. And I don't think we necessarily anymore have a cultural mark of growing up. Maybe, is that the right thing? Obviously, I know Julia, earlier in the year we had Doniel had his bat mitzvah. And that obviously in your culture is
did you not realize that saying his name was going to conjure him?
I did. I didn't say it 3 times though.
You didn't.
Sorry.
No, you only need to say beautifully once. It's only if you say it 3 times it can actually like affect you.
Anyway, back to before we go down the rabbit hole. Obviously, in the Jewish culture, that is a mark of passage of time, that they are then adults. We don't have that necessarily in the wider culture. I wouldn't say we have 16 at GCSEs. We have 18 for A levels. We have driving a car at 17. We have drinking at 18-ish. Which isn't necessarily a good one, but they are our marks of adulthood in many ways. And GCSEs and A levels are now part of that. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I think we can definitely reduce the amount of stress that they produce, but having a unifying mark of we have finished our learning, we are now going into the working world, whatever that looks like, is a good thing. Even to the point where you will hear those that sat their O levels saying that they were harder than those of us that sat GCSEs. It's a mark of time. The amount of time my mum will tell me that
3 hours in the snow to get to our O levels.
My mum will tell me that her degree is, my mum has a maths degree, was a maths teacher. For those of you that might have seen that post recently, this is where I get it from. She got 1 level lower than I did, but there's grade inflation now. This has now become the standard joke.
A B doesn't mean what it means nowadays.
Exactly, and
not to mention A stars. Margaret Mary, you got to dive in now.
Yeah, I've been in education a long time, right? So I qualified to be a teacher in 1992. So this was pre-Ofsted. And I think this is actually important. So my experience from being in a school pre-Ofsted, then inspections, then Ofsted, then this school going into special measures, There were no league tables in school at that point. When I went into teaching, I was there for about 6 years. I don't know exactly when league tables came in, but they weren't there when I started teaching. So the culture in school was very, very different. Very, very different at that point in time. And it's changed. It's been like putting a frog into cold water and turning the heat up.
I want to know what different was. What was it like before?
It was
I can't remember.
Sure. We had I think the teachers when I went in were complaining about the national curriculum and assessing students against strands. That's the culture I came into. And yeah, there were exams and we helped prepare the students for the exams, but we weren't giving them targets. There were no government saying this is what they got at Key Stage 3, this is what they should get at Key Stage 4, at Key Stage 5. And the main problem with that, and if I imagine myself in that system, so I was a pretty smart kid, can't run for toffee and not really that good at, I mean, I know we did an art thing, but I can't draw for toffee. I can use geometry to draw shapes, but that's not necessarily what my friend, the art teacher, does.
We don't have to apologise for being bright around here.
Yeah, but the thing is, if I had chosen to do art at O grade, my sister did, but I didn't. But then my target for art would have been A star, because that's where I was sitting with all, well, A, they didn't have A star, but that's where I was sitting in all my other subjects. So that is what, and it's like, that's nonsense. You know, that's not, my art teacher at Key Stage 3 gave me or second year, gave me an A for effort, but a C for application. So tries really hard, but really isn't very good at it. Yeah, but that was true.
And isn't it funny how culturally we would love to have the opposite? A C for effort, but still an A for outcomes. You know, we think that's ideal, but really it's quite the opposite. Really,
it's quite the opposite. Yeah. But so the problem with these, this is how I see it, and it's because of this change. It's like putting frogs into cold water and turning up the heat. Is that these targets have come in, the school is being graded against how well the students achieve these targets. These are not, it's not the students that are setting the targets. It's somebody in Whitehall who doesn't know that student at all. So this is what you should get. The school is getting smacked based on the percentage of children that not just meet those targets, because then the school is just satisfactory, which then you've got to worry about being unsatisfactory next time, but you're being judged on how many students are achieving above those targets. So it's like they say it all moves downhill, don't they? So the government smacks, and Ofsted smack the school, and I'm speaking from direct experience of as the process changed. The Ofsted and the government smack the school, SLT smack the teachers smack the kids, you know. And I was acting head of science in my school, and my youngest was doing her GCSEs that year, and my youngest did amazingly well in her GCSEs. She's got 14 GCSEs, 7 or 8 of them at A star, so amazingly well. And the biology teacher came to me and said, well, you know, Rowan got a B in her ISA, her target's an A star. I've asked her to come in at lunchtime to do another one. And she said to me, well, you know, miss, I'm okay with that B, because really I want to do music. So I'm not going to do that.
The same story.
Eh?
I think Julie has the same story.
Yeah, but then
don't you? Yeah.
But so as head of department, I should have been saying to that child, you need to come in at lunchtime and do another ISA, because you're not hitting your target. As a parent, I just went, she was up to 1 o'clock last night, finishing off a piece of coursework for her performing arts diploma. That's what she wants to do. That's where she's putting her energy. So if she's happy with a B, I'm happy with a B. You know, and that's what we're not allowed to say is teachers in school.
Yeah.
And that's where the culture has changed.
Yeah.
So all of this pressure has moved downhill to these kids. The study they did in 2010, I feel quite strongly about this. I'm really sorry, I'm getting carried away. They did a study in 2010 before Michael Gove's changes to the education system on the mental health of children. 2015, 5 years later, and this was like April before that May election. I remember it really strongly. 5 years later, they did the same study, and they found that the mental health in teenage children, in boys, it had declined by 2.5%, with girls, it had declined by 7% in 5 years of those changes. And if you want to, my honest opinion is these changes in the education system, maybe other social factors, but these changes in the education system in this country are partly fueling this drive and anxiety and this pressure of exams, because increasingly I've seen children hyperventilating before going into the exams. I never saw that in the early 90s. Never saw that at all until 2013.
Yeah, no doubt. Nicola,
Scary.
you mentioned education as a political football this morning in the Talking Tutoring channel, which I think was really helpful to remember in the context of this conversation. I think it's really helpful that you, Margaret Mary, are measuring impact over, you know, the length of your career and what we're seeing with young people. I know that in primary context, we were very careful to show families, so children and their parents, that children are not judged on their Key Stage 2 SATs. They go with them to secondary school as a benchmark. It's the school that's judged. And so we were really, really intentional about buffering. You know, it's one thing for Ofsted to smack the school, but it's not okay for the school to smack the families. You know, and I say families because in primary school, that's very much parents nagging children about SATs, but it doesn't matter. They're fine. They will have the same set of opportunities. Of course, not with 11 plus, with, you know, selective schools, but Key Stage 2 SATs are not the children's problem. A summative assessment should be just information. Yeah, go on.
Ultimately, they become the children's problem. And that's my direct
if it's allowed
experience
to
in
become
secondary school.
Yeah.
But it's not even. I had a kid who was given a government target of a grade 8 at GCSE based on her Key Stage 2. And I'm had this kid, and that kid's not going to get higher than a grade 4.
Yeah.
Where has that target come from?
Yeah.
And it's because she was supported so much through the Key Stage 2.
Yeah.
But the teacher at GCSE doesn't know where that's come from, and and when you've got peer reviews of teachers that are saying your class, you've got 13 kids who are not getting their expected target. What are you doing about it? And what that stuff all moves downhill, and it shouldn't, but it does. And teachers who qualified teachers who've been jumped through all the hoops are systematically managed out their job using those kind of conversations. And yeah, they are going to say to the kid, because they're being told, so they're going to say to them, you need to come in at lunchtime. And no, they shouldn't need to come in at lunchtime. Leave them alone. And I think that's the thing, when the students have their own motivation, when they say, I need to get this grade because I want to do that course, that's what the exams are for. If they don't know what they want to do, say, well, I need to get the best set of cards I can get because I don't know what I want to do. Actually, the targets should come from them, not the government. That's my humble opinion.
Well,
I'm going to shut up now.
We all agree with you really deeply, certainly of teachers being managed out of schools with those accountability culture conversations. What a disaster. I think also, you know, grades that are motivated by children's interests and goals is of course what we should be doing, because It's their education. Unfortunately, children are products of schools, and schools are being evaluated on their products. I think I would love to spend the last 15 minutes. And Margaret Mara, I'm really happy that you had a chance to have your rant, because I'm not I'm saying it's an important rant, and it's always part of the exam conversation. I want to come back to the concept of rite of passage, because I want to talk about what Faith just said. So my eldest is 19 as well, Faith. He was your year. He had teacher assessed grades, which was a disaster because we put the input in place between mocks and final exams. So he would have done much, much better. And he knew that very well and was frustrated about it. I remember very well that when he went to his A levels, it was his first exam experience. Number two didn't sit his exams. And I think it was a ripple effect of that same experience. He didn't have the sense of resilience yet. And number three has squared up to it, partly because she's a fierce human, and partly because things are sort of we're finding our foundations again. I'd love to talk about exams and resilience. They're uncomfortable, but we've been pointing at these memorable moments within them. Dee, let's go.
It was something that popped into my head when you asked about what are these for, what can they do for us? And yes, they are stressful, but what doesn't challenge us doesn't change us. And if we are going to develop young people who have the capability to face challenges, things that are difficult, uncomfortable, we have to expose them to those experiences in a supported way, to give them the tools that they can take away and then apply independently in a range of situations that will make them feel better about themselves, bring better versions of themselves to the situations, and therefore will be able to teach others how to develop that kind of resilience.
Thinking about your weight training. Yeah. So you're building them up slowly. You're not giving them too much weight, too much pressure, but it does break your muscles each time, doesn't it? Or
physiologically, that's exactly what happens. Yeah. The muscles break down and the body repairs them, and that's why they get stronger and in some cases bigger.
And then we need to build we as the leaders of the learning need to know how much weight this person can take, and therefore make adaptations to push them at their correct level of resilience. Let's talk again about resilience. Julie, you're unmuted.
That's because I forget to press the button.
I
was just thinking what you two were saying there. We're really talking about, and the teachers here will cringe, that zone of proximal development, but from a resilience point of view.
Yes.
We're not just talking about from an academic point of view, but isn't that very holistic? Aren't we talking about the whole person?
We need to be, and I think if we make a connection between today's conversation and last week we said, what's education for? And the closest we got to an answer was, it's for preparing young people to participate in society, whatever society expects from them. And you could definitely map a correlation between exams and the sort of the judginess of them, but also the sort of heavy content of them, and what.
The thing is, if exams are for preparing our young people to go out, and what about those that don't reach that grade 4, grade 5 boundary? Right? As teachers, we're going, well, you've actually passed it, you've got a grade, but we all know that out there in the real world, that grade may as well be a U. Right? Anything below that 4 is considered not. What about them? Because they've one of my best results as a teacher was my ungraded target that got a grade 1 in science. Oh my God, she worked so hard. Nobody is going to see that. They're going to see a grade 1.
Okay. And how has that experience of that hard work impacted her? She got the one, which is bad and good, right? How has she navigated that achievement? Because she's moved up on the rungs. She's moved up ladder rungs, hasn't she?
Yeah. By doing what she always does, which is just slowly plodding on. And I think that's the issue with that particular student. It was slowly plodding on.
And the world and the system doesn't adapt its pace.
No.
Or doesn't adapt its pace enough. Helen.
But that student now believes that she can do it. So she's going to keep doing it.
Not necessarily. She just did because she was expected to do revision, so she did revision, and she was expected to turn up to lessons, so she turned up to lessons, and she was very malleable, so she always did what she was told. Didn't necessarily think about whether that was the right thing to do or not. And so no, I'm not sure that she did put in extra effort. I think that was her personality and that's what she did. So I don't even know if she recognized how much of a difference she made for herself.
Really
but will she not recognize that doing the work created a positive result? It doesn't matter what that was in. She will take that sense of doing stuff made a difference into everything else.
I'm not sure with this particular student that she would.
Julie's not sure that she's insightful enough, or it's the metacognition that's lacking there. It's the reflective element.
She has just followed instructions, and the instructions made a difference in a number on a piece of paper.
It's really interesting. GCSEs don't teach anyone to be creative or challenging. They teach us to be compliant.
She's she will, well, it was a long time ago, but she will have been a really good worker when she has found a job that will take her.
Yeah.
Because she will carry on plodding on.
Nicola, you're last. Helen's first, then Nicola, then I'm wrapping up. We've got 5 minutes.
Very quickly, because I'm going to have to dash and actually go do the job in a second. It's exam season, isn't it? There were a couple of sort of strands there that jumped out. I was reading a thing, I think they call it Maths Horizon. They did a report on the maths curriculum all the way up and how heavy it is, and whether we need to spread out some of the things so that we have mastery of, and this is where the mastery thing comes in, that they have mastered the underpinning skill before moving on to the next one. There is no point in teaching algebra if they cannot understand multiplying, dividing, the basics.
And the definition of mastery is don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong.
So one of the suggestions was that some of the Key Stage 2 maths needs to go up and some of the Key Stage 3 maths needs to go up, potentially just spread it out a bit. So make sure that they've got those underpinning things sorted before we approach the other stuff. Now, when it comes to maths, I have two different, almost conflicting opinions. I enjoy maths, yes, and getting into it, but I am very cognizant that some people don't and really can't get into it. And there is an element of algebra teaching problem solving and the beauty of maths that is good for students to learn. At the same time, is it going to help them in the future? No, they need to know percentages and they need to know ratio and they need to know some of these fundamental functioning maths things. So that's one of those ones where I think we probably do need we have a minimum mathematical standard for being able to do something in the future. It needs to be a lot slimmed down compared to what's currently in there, just so that people know that this is a thing and taken throughout the year. I mean, we need the functional skills qualification more. I was having a conversation with a parent about it the other day. We need the functional skills qualification in schools, not just post school.
Yeah, because maths needs to be fit for purpose because it's a functional skill. Nicola?
Just going to the topic of resiliency, I think, like, I wrote a blog about this on my website recently, thinking a lot about that word. I think we as teachers are constantly going, how do we get them to be more resilient? And I think actually really, the more I think about trauma and attachment based teaching, it's like it all stems from the nervous system and it all stems from what your central kind of self-concept is. If you kind of have that secure feeling in yourself, like, I can do this, then that is a good foundation for other things to layer on top of. But the reality is, in our society and with its complexities, that is the minority of people. Most people have levels of anxiety or levels of self-doubt or whatever the thing is. So for most people, it's not as simple as, oh, we teach them a thing and then they start to feel good about themselves. But that being said, we do have a lot of power, because the more and more opportunities we give young people to be successful, the more we do start to chip away at it. But it's not an overnight thing.
I love what you're talking about with the nervous system, and I'm going to grab that word opportunities. That's what was in my head as well. We give our young people opportunities, and isn't it interesting and sort of a relief? And Faith, it's awesome that you jumped into this conversation, because you absolutely reminded us that exams are an opportunity. And they're an opportunity to unlock doors, they're an opportunity to face a challenge, there's an opportunity to to join in with society, there's an opportunity to shake a pencil and show what you know. There's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that maybe one of the things that we can think more about between now and next May is scaffolding. How do we scaffold our young people so that they can make the most of this opportunity? The more I think about it, the less I hate exams. I just hate everything running up to them. I just hate everything around them. But rites of passage are healthy for people, because, like Dee said right at the beginning of this conversation, before I pressed record, when you have a goal to work towards, and you were talking about weightlifting championships, weren't you? Dee's going to the Olympics next. It's helpful to have a goal to work towards. It's helpful to be able to plan that goal, scaffold that goal, be guided towards that goal. And that's who we are. That's what we show up for. Margaret Mary, it was really, really helpful that you reminded us of the context that is less positive and less pleasant, and how that has a ripple effect and creates fissures in our whole society. Because absolutely, that creates anxiety. But I do have to wrap up now. So I'm going to say, well done to you for coming to nurture yourselves and your thinking in the middle of exam time. Julie, are you crocheting under the table? All crocheting is now done.
Knitting. I'm so grateful to go back to.
I was thinking about not doing a session this week because everybody's up to their eyeballs in exam prep. And then I thought that's the last thing I should do, because leaving you guys high and dry just at that moment would be a terrible thing. So I'm really, really chuffed that we are making time to scaffold ourselves so we can be the people that our young people need. May they all be successful, and remember to breathe. Have a lovely weekend. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Margaret Mary. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks, Faith.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jenna. Sending you love. All the best. Bye.
Bye.